Hi everyone, Jessica here from Paper Ink Stamp and welcome back to my channel. So today's video we're going to be creating a card using two Simon Says Stamp products. The first is a stencil. This is the Layering Heart Stencil. This pack comes with 4 stencils, 2 with big layering hearts and the other 2 with smaller ones. And you can kind of see there how they're going to layer together. So I've cut down a piece of cardstock. I'm going to be creating a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch card, and I've cut down this panel to be slightly smaller, so then it's going to be smaller than my card base. So what I'm doing is lining up the stencil, but I'm really lining up the pattern with how I want it to sort of appear on my card, but also with the lines on my grid mat. This is going to make it easier for when I need to match up this design with the second stencil. Because I know I've used my grid lines, I can just put my stencil up to that same grid lines and it will layer exactly how it's meant to. So the inks I'm going to be using for my background today, I'm using the Prism World of Colour by Hunky Dory. The first layer, so this first colour I'm using, this is the Apricot Sorbet. The next colour I'm going to use is Flamingo Paradise. So I'm going with really light colours. They're not particularly vibrant, but I wanted something that was a little bit more subtle. So I'm just using one of the blending foams to apply this ink, and I'm trying to be as light-handed as possible. I don't want my background to be too overwhelming for what I'm going to be popping onto my card. So the card today is going to be relatively basic. I just wanted to make use out of this stencil and have that be part of the main design of the card. And then with this stamp set we're using the World of Love sentiments, and this has got a huge love heart stamp on it, and I want that to kind of, again, be the main focal point. I don't want one to pull away from the other. I want them to work together. So you can see that I've inked up that first stencil, and now I'm just lining up my second stencil. So like I said, I used my grid lines on my mat to make sure that I can line this up exactly how it's supposed to be. And with this second stencil, it's going to actually ink the hearts in between the previous hearts. So you'll be able to see this when I start inking this up. So like I said, for this layer I'm using the Flamingo Paradise, and this is a slightly darker ink. The pad is a lot juicier, so I did just put some of the excess from the ink pad onto my glass mat to begin with, and then I just took a little bit of the ink from my glass mat. So you can see this one's really juicy. It's actually moving around on my desk as I pop in my blending tool into it, so you want to just be careful not to ruin your projects. So you can see that I'm just going down. It's so easy to use these stencils, and it's a really quick and easy background. If you just want something simple, you could use much lighter colours. You could just use one stencil. It could be interesting to see how you could mix the smaller hearts with the bigger heart stencil. There's also loads of different techniques you could do with these stencils. You could use different kinds of pastes. Like I said, you could use multiple stencils. You could just use one stencil. I think I used one of these with some of the Hunky Dory Moonstone paste, and it worked really well. So you can see we've got our background all finished, and I'm just taking out this World of Love sentiments. And like I said, this big focal stamp, this is a big heart, and it's made to kind of look like the world. So you can see just how well that's going to fit on this panel. That is, like I said, just slightly under 4 1/4 by 5.5. So I decided to pop this into my stamping platform, and I decided to stamp this in black. So there's lots of different directions, of course, that you could go in with this, but I just decided to have black and have that heart kind of just stand out a little bit more. So to begin with, I inked this up with my Memento Tuxedo Black, and when I pull this back for the first time, you can kind of see that it needs a lot more ink. It needs a lot more going over, and that is the perfect thing about using a stamping platform, is you can ink this up as many times as you need to. But I did then go on to a more juicy pad. I used my Versafone Onyx Black ink. I did still have a few patchy areas, but I really kind of got it as good as I could get. And just to help with this, I did then apply some clear embossing powder, and I will heat set that as well. This will also just finish it with a nice shine, and it's going to just help it to stand out a little bit more. Then I'm going to go ahead and heat set this with my heat gun. So I've let this warm up just a little bit, and that just really helps quicken the process of melting that embossing powder, and it means then that it's not going to warp your cardstock too much. So you can see this colour changing here from that clear embossing powder. You can see it changing then back to that solid black, and I always love watching embossing powder melt. My favourite is always to watch gold melt. I think this love heart would be absolutely brilliant in different colours of embossing powder. You could do multiple colours together, but you could also apply it with lots of different kinds of ink. You could go in a rainbow fashion. You know, if you were to really work down it, I think you could create something really great with this stamp. So when I had finished with that embossing powder and it was all melted and cooled back down, I did just fussy cut this out. I'm not sure that there's a coordinating die for this stamp set, but it was super easy just to cut this out. I added some foam squares to the back of this just to give it a little bit of dimension and popped that in the centre of my card panel. So the last thing I'm going to do is add a sentiment. So this stamp set, of course, is called World of Love Sentiments, and it comes with some really great sentiments in there. And you've got additional stamps like the little heart as well. So I wanted my sentiment strip to actually match with the colours of my card. So I decided again to take that the Flamingo Paradise colour, and I'm just blending that onto some plain cardstock, and I'm going to pop this back into my stamping platform, and then I'm going to stamp one of the sentiments. Sentiment I went for this card is You Make My World Go Round, and this stamp set has got some really great sentiments, whether you're sending it to loved ones, friends, you know, whether it's an anniversary card, a Valentine's Day card, or whether it's to send to someone who maybe you haven't seen in a while. It's got some really fantastic sentiments. So I'm just inking this up with the VersaFine Onyx Black ink, and then I'm going to set that aside just to dry to make sure that we don't smudge our sentiment before then I die cut it. For the inside of my card, I'm going to take this really big sentiment they've got in their stamp set, and this one says You Are My World. So again, it's going to match that sentiment that we've got on the front. Now I did try to ink this up in a little bit of an ombre with both that Apricot Sorbet and Flamingo Paradise, but I didn't think that it particularly blended very well, so I just went with the Flamingo Paradise colour because it was slightly darker. And I did just ink this up a couple of times, again the benefit of using a stamping platform, just so then I can make sure that I got a really great impression, and then the inside sentiment matches my sentiment and the colours that I've got on the front of my card. So you can see all the elements here together and it all just matches really nicely. So now my sentiment for the front has dried. I'm just going to die cut this using a sort of sentiment strip that came from one of the Hunky Dory. I think it was the Be Happy Sentiments die set. It came with a little banner. This is the only kind of sentiment banner that I own, but it's really great because it's got some lovely detailing around the outside. So I just popped that through my die cutter machine, and really looking at it now, I wish I'd made this into a banner, so sort of cut the ends of it to be more like a banner or a flag, but I did end up just cutting this smaller, so I did just trim the edges off. And then I'm just going to apply some foam tape to the back of this, again just to give it a little bit more dimension. And as I said, I'm going to pop some foam strips onto the back of this and then pop that in the centre of our love heart. And I really love how the black really stands out against the other colours. Again, there's so many different colour variations I could have gone with here, but I am happy that I decided to go with that black. So now we've got our panel on there, we can go ahead and actually attach the panel to our card base. So I'm just going to use my purple tape runner just to add some adhesive to the back, and then we can go ahead, like I said, and attach this to the card. So the last thing I'm going to do for this card is just add some simple embellishments, and I'm going to use some Nuvo crystal drops. The two colours that I decided to go with was Ivory Seashell and Simply White. I think this Ivory Seashell is a really great colour. It's so beautiful to add to projects, and I think it goes with so much. And then I just added that white as well because I didn't feel like I wanted to add sort of too much colour. And that is then our card all finished. I absolutely love using these Simon Says stamp products, and I think you can create some really fantastic cards. So there's my finished card. I also paired it with a handmade envelope, and I used some Craft Perfect bubblegum pink card to create this envelope. But I will leave some links to the products that I've used in the description box down below, so be sure to check that out. And if you did like this card, then please give this video a thumbs up and leave me a comment down below. It's really hugely appreciated. So on screen now, there's a few other videos that you might be interested in, but be sure to hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you get notified every time I post a new video. See you in the next video and happy crafting!